What is a better click-through rate? 10% or 4%? 10%, right? Because when 10 out of 100 people click, that's better than when 4 out of 100 click. But the 4% click-through rate video had 300,000 views. The 10% click-through rate video had only 7,000. And it could as well have been the other way around, so 7,000 views with 4% click-through rate. But the truth is that the height of the click-through rate doesn't say anything whether the video gets a lot of views or not. And comparing click-through rates between videos is about the most useless thing you can do. And yes, it's true. Click-through rate is a huge factor for the algorithm to decide if it should promote your video, yes or no. But CTR fluctuates all the time. Let's say that this is your YouTube video that you release and this is your audience. These are groups of people. These lines are stick figures. I got bored of drawing stick figures. What happens when you release a video? You will release a video first of all to your subscribers. If your subscribers react well, then it will promote your video to more people. YouTube tests what the reaction is of those people. If they don't react very well, then it won't promote it anymore to these people, but these and these groups of people react very well. So it goes and promotes the video further to a bigger audience. When they react very well, then it goes further. When they don't react, they don't react, and they don't react, only the path continues here. Same here, it goes well, and it will promote it further, but here it is not received very well. How does YouTube measure if a video does very well? Well, that is by the amount of click-through rate amongst other things. But the problem is that when it promotes your video to this group of people, your CTR goes down. When it promotes to this group of people, it goes up. To this group of people, it goes up, 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 down, 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 down. This is the CTR that you see fluctuate over and over and over again in your YouTube analytics. That number changes all the time, so you can't really derive a certain conclusion from a number on a certain day in YouTube analytics. But the funny thing is, when your video is promoted to a bigger group of people, that means that it also includes people that are less interested. That means that every single time that your video is promoted to a bigger group of people, then your CTR goes down. So you have maybe, for example, a CTR here of 15%, here of 12%, here 10%, here 5%, and here it dips to 1%, for example. That means that your click-through rate goes down when your videos get bigger and bigger and bigger on YouTube. That means that if you have more views, that your click-through rate overall is lower. And we can see this happening in our 300k views video that I used as an example in the beginning of this video. You can see that the click-through rate over here was actually pretty high. It was around 10% even. But suddenly over here in the beginning of November, it took a nosedive. And we can explain the nosedive in click-through rate by looking at our views graph. Because this shows us that at the same date that the click-through rate went down, that our views went up, and not a little bit, it spiked. But this also explains why you have a high click-through rate. For example, I have a click-through rate here of 12%. But YouTube, let's say that this group of people doesn't react, so it can't promote the video any further because the next group of people are not into the video. And especially for small channels, your click-through rate is all over the place. Your sample size is simply smaller. 2 or 3 views can make the difference between a super high click-through rate and a super low click-through rate. And drawing conclusions based on statistically insignificant data is pretty dangerous. Click-through rate is calculated based on impressions, but not every single impression is counted. Most notably, what they don't count are external apps and websites, the YouTube mobile website, a couple of YouTube apps, impressions from end screens and cards, they use a separate metric for that, videos that play in the background, and thumbnails that are shown less than 50% or less than a second. When you want to compare click-through rates, you also have to take into consideration the traffic sources and the amount of traffic that is coming from that source compared to the other video. I've here 3 videos with all different click-through rates in the same time span. The first video has a click-through rate of 3.6%, the second 10.5% and the third 5.2%. Can you see that all three videos have different traffic sources that drive the most views? The first one is the end screen, which drives 26% of the traffic, but the impressions aren't counted as I said earlier. The second one is external, which drives 45% of the traffic, which is pretty significant for a video, but the impressions aren't counted. And the third video is suggested, which drives 47% of the traffic, and impressions are counted in this video. The same applies to the rest of the traffic sources, of course. Looking at the views, the first video has only a click-through rate of 3.6%, but had 1618 views. The second video, 10.5% click-through rate, but had only 289 views. Can you really compare these average click-through rates? I'll take that 3.6%. And by the way, if you want more views on your YouTube videos instead of higher click-through rates, I can help you in my coaching program, The Cheat Code. Because the program is basically a cheat code for your YouTube career. You can shave off 2 or 3 years because I already made all your mistakes for you on my other channels over the last 10 years. A link to book a discovery call is in the description. And back to click-through rate, it highly depends on your audience. A broad audience topic like humor or talk shows probably have lower click-through rates than, let's say, a video about music production, simply because the audience is bigger. Also, viewers might not be into the topic of your video. You might have the best thumbnail in the world, but if viewers won't click, your click-through rate is low, but that doesn't mean that your thumbnail is bad. Therefore, how strong a video idea is influences click-through rate heavily. Mark Rober's video with the squirrel obstacle course leans heavily on the video idea, but the title and thumbnail communicate that idea very clearly and deliver a home run for a viral video. But I guess the click-through rate for that video is 2, maybe 3% because it's such a broad audience video. Click-through rate is highly relative to the competition and on that particular topic. So comparing click-through rates between videos doesn't make much sense. You may have a lot of competition on one topic but not on the other, which influences the CTR heavily on the same channel on the same audience. If the competition has a click-through rate of 6% and you have 5%, that is bad. And when the competition has a click-through rate of 4% and you have 5%, that's good. But we don't know the click-through rate percentages of other videos. So is 5% good or is 5% bad? There is no way of knowing that. CTR also changes over time. I have a video here with a pretty consistent amount of views, except for the corona bump here and the startup phase here. You can see when I look at the impressions click-through rates that overall the click-through rate goes down. Another video with less consistent views. You can see here corona bump here and the baseline is a little bit higher, but it goes down. The impressions click-through rate goes down overall. Another video with even less consistent views, the impressions click-through rate overall is going down. But click-through rate going down is not the case for every single video. And this had a corona bump here, but overall somewhat consistent views. Then over here, when I look at the CTR, we can see that there is a little bit an upward trend here and it might even go down a little bit here. So if you want to compare click-through rates, you should also take the age of the video into consideration. So, is click-through rate completely useless? I don't think so. When you have a low click-through rate, let's say lower than 2% on a video, and you have a low amount of views on a video, I do think that tells you something. I think that you probably need to take a look at your title and your thumbnail. And I think that the most reliable comparison you can do on the video itself, because the audience stays somewhat the same and the competition stays somewhat the same. I do think that the click-through rate in the YouTube dashboard in the first 24 hours after releasing a video tells you something, because it says something about how interested your existing audience is in the topic of your video, and it tells you something about how willing they are to click on that video. But CTR being unreliable doesn't change the fact that better thumbnails will get you more views. In this video right here, I'll tell you exactly how you can hack the human brain and use some psychology to get more views on your YouTube videos. But I can also help you with your titles and thumbnails in my coaching program. The link to book a discovery call is in the description.